There is a man in history who had absolutely everything taken from him. His freedom, his name, his body, his rights. He was beaten, he was crippled, he was bought and sold like furniture. He owned nothing. He controlled nothing, not where he slept, not what he ate, not whether he lived or died. And this man became the most influential philosophy teacher in the Roman Empire. Emperors sent their sons to study with him. Military commanders crossed continents to hear him speak. Marcus Aurelius, the man we studied yesterday, the most powerful ruler in the world, credited this man's ideas as the foundation of his own inner life. His name was Epictetus. He was born a slave. He died a free man, though not because anyone gave him his freedom. He was free long before the legal paperwork ever came through. Because Epictetus understood something that almost no one understands, something so radical and so counterintuitive that it takes most people years to even begin to grasp it. He understood that freedom is not a condition of your circumstances. It is a condition of your mind. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus discourses today. We're going to go deep into the life, the teaching, and the practice of Epictetus. By the end of this video, you will have the most practical, actionable framework in all of Stoicism, the one that turns philosophy from theory into daily habit. Let's begin where Epictetus himself began, at the bottom. Epictetus was born around 50 AD in Hierapolis, a city in what is now Western Turkey. His exact birth date is unknown. His birth name is unknown. Epictetus is not a real name. It is a Greek word meaning simply acquired. He was named after what he was. Property, his mother was a slave, which meant he was born a slave. In Roman law, there was no other possibility. Your status followed your mother. And so before he had drawn his first breath, his life had already been decided by a system he had no part in creating. At some point in his youth, he was transported to Rome and sold. His owner was a man named Epaphroditus, a powerful freedman who served as a secretary to Emperor Nero. Epaphroditus was, by all accounts, a cruel man. And the story that has come down to us about their relationship is one of the most important in the entire Stoic tradition. The broken leg, the story that defines Stoicism according to the ancient account. Epaphroditus once seized Epictetus by the leg and began twisting it, an act of deliberate cruelty, perhaps to test him, perhaps simply because he could. Epictetus, entirely calm, said, "You are going to break it." Epaphroditus twisted harder. The leg broke. Epictetus said without agitation, "Did I not tell you?" and said nothing more. This story is not merely biographical. It is the Stoic philosophy demonstrated in its most extreme form. The body can be broken. The will cannot be touched without your consent. That broken leg left Epictetus with a permanent limp. He walked with difficulty for the rest of his life, and he never in any of his recorded teachings complained about it, not once. At some point, we don't know exactly when, Epictetus was permitted to study under a Stoic philosopher named Musonius Rufus. This was the turning point. The teachings of Musonius ignited something in Epictetus that would never go out. He did not merely learn Stoicism, he embodied it, tested it in the furnace of his own life, and proved in living flesh what it could do. He was eventually freed, manumitted by Epaphroditus or by a subsequent owner. The exact circumstances are unclear. What is clear is that once free, Epictetus set up a school in Rome and began teaching. Then around 93 AD, Emperor Domitian expelled all philosophers from Rome. Domitian feared ideas. He feared people who taught others how to think independently, because independent thought is threatening to tyrants. Epictetus left Rome and settled in Nicopolis, a city on the western coast of Greece, and established a school there. What he had almost nothing: a small hut, a straw mat, a clay lamp, a few basic possessions. No books written in his own hand, no estate, no slaves of his own. He reportedly adopted a child in his old age to ensure it would be cared for, an act of pure generosity from someone with almost no material means. When he built the most sought-after school in the empire, students traveled from across the Roman world to study under him. The Emperor Hadrian visited him. Marcus Aurelius read his words obsessively. His teachings were recorded by his student Arrian, who attended classes like a journalist and wrote down everything, and became two of the most important philosophical texts ever produced. He never wrote a single word himself. Everything we have from Epictetus was recorded by others. The discourses are Arrian's notes from his lectures. The Enchiridion, which means handbook or that which is held in the hand, is Arrian's distillation of the most essential teachings, short enough to carry and memorize. The irony is almost too perfect. The man who owned nothing, not even his own name, left behind words that have outlasted every emperor, every palace, and every empire of his age. The Enchiridion opens with one of the most important sentences in all of Western philosophy, 53 short chapters. And the very first sentence, the very first thing Epictetus wants you to understand is this: some things are in our control and others not. Epictetus Enchiridion, 5 words. 5 words that, if you truly internalize them, not just understand them intellectually, but feel them, live them, test them in real situations, will change the entire texture of your daily life. Everything in Epictetan philosophy flows from this single distinction. So let's be very precise about what he means, because people often misunderstand it. Epictetus says that what is in our control are our opinions, desires, aversions, and impulses to act. These are internal, these are ours, these cannot be taken from us without our consent. What is not in our control is everything else: our body, our reputation, our property, our position, the behavior of other people. The outcome of our efforts, the whether we are loved or hated, whether we succeed or fail by the world's measure. The most common misreading: people hear this and think, so Stoics don't care about results, they're passive. They give up. This is exactly wrong. Epictetus is not saying don't try. He is saying try with full effort and locate your peace in the quality of that effort, not in the result. The archer draws the bow with complete skill and focus. Once the arrow is released, the wind may take it. The archer's excellence lies in the drawing, not the landing. The Enchiridion then works through this idea in dozens of different contexts: relationships, illness, death, public opinion, anger, ambition, loss. In each case, Epictetus applies the same scalpel. Which part of this is mine and which part is not? Some passages read like they were written this morning. People are disturbed not by things, but by their opinions about things. Epictetus Enchiridion, this single sentence is the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy, the most evidence-based psychological treatment in modern medicine. CBT was developed in the 1960s. Epictetus wrote this in the 1st century AD. 2,000 years later, we rediscovered what a slave already knew. On the death of loved ones, Epictetus is bracing and honest. Never say of anything, I have lost it. But I have returned it. Is your child dead? It has been returned. Is your wife dead? She has been returned. Epictetus Enchiridion, this is not coldness. It is the recognition that everything we love, every person, every possession, every circumstance we cherish was never truly ours to keep. We hold them temporarily. When they are gone, we have not lost them. We have returned them to the world that lent them to us. Marcus Aurelius used this exact framing when his children died, not as a defense mechanism, as a genuine shift in how he understood possession and loss. On reputation and the opinions of others, Epictetus is particularly sharp. If someone speaks badly of you, what harm have they actually done to you? Unless you choose to be harmed by it, you have not been harmed. Epictetus Enchiridion, your reputation is not in your control. What people think of you is not in your control. What is in your control is whether you let their opinion determine the quality of your day. Epictetus insists that choice belongs entirely to you. The Enchiridion is only about 15,000 words. You could read it in 2 hours. But most people who have read it report going back to it for decades, because at every new stage of life, it reveals something it didn't reveal before. It is that kind of book, dense with implication, quiet on the surface, transformative underneath. The 3 disciplines, his complete system, while the dichotomy of control is the philosophical foundation. Epictetus also gave us something even more practical. A complete 3-part system for living a Stoic life. He called these the 3 disciplines, and they work together as a coherent daily practice. Most people who have read about Stoicism know the dichotomy of control. Far fewer know this 3-part system, but this is arguably Epictetus's greatest contribution and the most directly usable tool he left us. Discipline 1. The discipline of desire. The first discipline concerns what you want and what you fear, your desires and aversions. Epictetus's prescription here is deceptively radical. Limit your desires to what is within your control. This does not mean stop wanting things. It means stop placing your deepest desires on things you cannot guarantee. Don't desire a promotion, desire to work with excellence. Don't desire to be loved, desire to be worthy of love. Don't desire health, desire to take care of your body wisely. The desire is redirected from the outcome to the quality of your effort and character. Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. Epictetus Enchiridion, the practical implication. Every morning before you begin working toward anything, ask yourself, am I attached to the process or am I attached to the outcome? If the answer is outcome, you have already created the conditions for suffering. Discipline 2. The discipline of action. The second discipline concerns how you act in the world, specifically, how you act in relation to other people and society. Epictetus calls this the discipline of impulse, the regulation of your drive to act. His key concept here is what scholars call the reserve clause. When you pursue any goal, you act, but with an internal reservation. You think, I will do this if nothing prevents me. You give full effort while accepting in advance that circumstances may intervene. This is not defeatism. It is the combination of complete commitment and complete non-attachment. The parent who says, I will do everything in my power to protect my child, and I accept that there are things beyond my power. The entrepreneur who says, I will work with everything I have, and I accept that markets are not mine to control. The reserve clause in practice before any significant action today. Add this phrase internally. I will do this, and I accept whatever result follows. You will notice an immediate shift. The anxiety that comes from needing a specific outcome begins to relax. You can act more freely, more boldly, more creatively, because your peace is no longer hostage to the result. Discipline 3, the discipline of assent, the third and most sophisticated discipline, is the one Epictetus considered most important. It concerns how you respond to the impressions that arise in your mind. Every moment of every day, your mind receives impressions, thoughts, perceptions, interpretations of events. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your brain immediately generates an impression. This person is disrespecting me. I am angry. That impression arrives automatically. You did not choose it. What you can choose is whether to assent to it, whether to accept the impression as true and act on it, or to pause and examine it first. Epictetus called this the most powerful skill a human being can develop, because the person who can pause between impression and assent, who can hold a thought up to the light before accepting it as reality, is, in a very real sense, free. Completely free, no external circumstance can compel their reaction. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl, drawing directly from Epictetus, Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, arrived at this same insight independently, under conditions of unimaginable horror. The Stoics had named it 2,000 years earlier. 3 disciplines: desire, action, assent. Together they form a complete system, not just a philosophy, but a daily operating procedure for human life. Epictetus taught these disciplines not as abstract theory, but as practical exercises, to be practiced in the actual texture of ordinary days. Why a slave's philosophy outlasted an empire, the Roman Empire no longer exists. The palaces of Nero, Epictetus's first master, are ruins. The legions of Marcus Aurelius are dust. The emperors who banished philosophers from Rome are remembered, if at all, as footnotes in history books. And the words of a lame, formerly enslaved man from a provincial city in Turkey are read by millions of people every single year. Why? Why does this particular voice survive when so much else is lost? I think the answer is this. Epictetus wrote, or rather spoke, from the most extreme position of powerlessness a human being can occupy. He had no authority to appeal to, no status to hide behind, no wealth to cushion him. His philosophy was not theoretical. It was survival technology, tested in real time, in real suffering. When someone with every advantage in the world tells you that attitude is a choice, it's easy to dismiss them. When someone who was born a slave, beaten, crippled, owned, and exiled tells you the same thing and proves it with their own life, the words carry a different weight entirely. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus, Enchiridion, this philosophy reached across centuries and touched people in situations as desperate as Epictetus's own. James Stockdale, the American POW we discussed in Day 2, had memorized passages from the Enchiridion before his capture. When his plane was shot down over Vietnam in 1965, he reportedly said to himself, "I am leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus." He survived 7.5 years of imprisonment and torture. He credited Epictetus with saving his mind when his body could not be protected. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison on Robben Island. He and his fellow prisoners studied and shared Stoic philosophy, particularly the works of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. They called their copy of the writings the Bible. When Mandela emerged from prison, observers were struck by the absence of bitterness in him. He credited his inner work. In the 20th century, Albert Ellis, the psychologist who developed rational emotive behavior therapy, the predecessor to CBT, openly acknowledged Epictetus as his primary influence. The cornerstone of his entire therapeutic framework was the Epictetan insight. It is not events that disturb us, but our beliefs about events. The unbroken chain: Epictetus, right arrow; Marcus Aurelius, right arrow; James Stockdale, right arrow; Viktor Frankl, right arrow; Albert Ellis, right arrow; CBT, right arrow. Millions of people in therapy today. The ideas of a first-century slave flow directly into the most widespread psychological treatment of the modern world. This is not a historical curiosity. This is a living tradition, and you are now part of it. There is one final thing about Epictetus that I want you to carry with you. He was deeply suspicious of philosophy that stayed in the head, of people who could recite Stoic principles perfectly but whose behavior had not changed at all. He called these people show philosophers, performers of wisdom rather than practitioners of it. If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. Don't wish to seem clever to others. If anyone finds you to be something, distrust yourself. Epictetus, Enchiridion for Epictetus, the measure of a philosopher was never what they knew. It was how they behaved when things went wrong. How they treated the people below them in the social hierarchy. Whether they maintained their composure not in calm moments, but in moments of genuine pressure, pain, and loss. That is the standard, not eloquence, not impressive quotes. Actual behavior, actual practice, actual transformation. Your practice, the pause before you react. You now have 2 daily practices from this series. The evening pause from day 2, 3 honest questions before bed. The morning intention from day 4, 4 steps before you pick up your phone. Today, Epictetus gives you a third, and this one lives in real time in the actual moments of your actual day. I call it simply the pause. It comes from his third discipline, the discipline of assent, and it works like this. Today, when something triggers a strong reaction in you, anger, anxiety, offense, jealousy, frustration, do not respond immediately. Do not act on the first impression. Instead, pause, literally stop, even for 3 seconds, and ask yourself one question: is what I am about to feel, say, or do within my control? And is it worth it? The pause. Your practice for today, that is the entire practice. One question, in the gap between what happens and what you do next. You do not need to meditate for an hour. You do not need to recite Stoic principles. You just need to find the space, and Epictetus promises you it is always there, even if it sometimes feels like it lasts only a fraction of a second, and ask that question. Over time, this gap widens. What starts as a deliberate, effortful pause becomes a habit, and eventually, after months and years of practice, it begins to happen naturally. The reaction softens before it has fully formed. The anger arrives already at half volume. The anxiety surfaces already with a question attached to it. This is what Epictetus meant by mastery of the self, not the suppression of feeling, but the cultivation of a tiny, sovereign space between what happens to you and what you do about it. Morning, the morning intention, 4 minutes, 4 steps. Throughout the day, the pause, 1 question before every strong reaction. Evening, the evening pause, 3 questions before sleep, 3 practices, morning, day, night. That is your Stoic framework for the week. Epictetus would ask you not whether you understood it, but whether you actually did it. A man born with nothing, no name, no freedom, no rights, looked at his circumstances and decided that none of those things were the point. The point was what he did with his mind, how clearly he saw, how honestly he lived, how fully he showed up for his students, his ideas, and his own practice. 2,000 years later, his words are in your hands. Do something with them. This week, 3 practices: morning intention, the pause, evening pause. Let them run quietly in the background of your ordinary days and see what shifts. Next video, Seneca, the wealthiest Stoic, the most contradicted Stoic, and possibly the most honest writer in the ancient world. A man who knew everything about the good life and struggled, visibly, to live it. Subscribe and I'll see you there. Until then, keep practicing.